Welcome to Cove, Wellbeing and the My Trauma, Your Trauma series with me, Owen Morgan. I want to share my trauma journey and that of others. We will also look at the world of trauma healing, support and research, including guests who specialise in helping those overcome their trauma. My Trauma, Your Trauma is here to explore human experience. Welcome to Trauma Chat. This is a place where we invite on guests to talk all things trauma. Please watch and listen with care. Some of the content may be triggering or may make you feel uncomfortable. So do press that stop button and take a break. Always put yourself first. I'm a mental health advocate and a massage therapist, and I've interviewed hundreds of wellness experts. I've also spent time with people with stories of overcoming their own wellness struggles. I myself have suffered from childhood abuse from childminders, severe school bullying, and a deep depression in my 20s, plus blackout anxiety. I also had a life-threatening illness in my early 30s. I want to give a voice to those who can inspire others to improved wellness. So we've got a very special show today. I'm actually teaming up with Zach from the podcast Into the Dark Blue with the tagline, "Let's get real, guys." Me and Zach are going to sit down and talk about the power of writing for trauma, talk a little bit about trauma too, but talking about both of our passions for poetry, and we'll share a few poems with you on the show, and we'll talk about how, powerful being creative is. If you want to check out more about Into Dark Blue, check out the links in the description of this video. So a little bit more about the guys at Into the Dark Blue. They pair what it means to be masculine in today's world with carefully curated adult beverages, a pub talk of sorts, where open and honest dialogue can shed the light on men's mental health issues, promoting positive masculinity whilst attempting to find correlations between the drink and the stigma, if any. Here, where you come from matters. How you're moving forward matters too. Somewhere in between, before and after, makes up the dark blue. Okay, let's go and chat with Zach, and we hope you enjoy the show.
What's up, guys? I'm Zach. I'm really glad to be here today with Owen. I'm pretty excited. This is it's just another example of one of these really great connections that we make on Instagram and how we can use social media for good, and making connections and building communities and things like that. So I'm the host of Into the Dark Blue, and we are a men's mental health and wellness podcast. We're focusing on building a community of men's groups, and basically doing that through enjoying some tasty adult beverages. So we're attempting to do a joint episode today. So the listeners of the Owen's Trauma podcast and the listeners of Into the Dark Blue will actually hear the same episode. Edited for our separate platforms. So this is a fun experiment.
Yeah, it certainly is. And that is a super special way to collaborate like this today. And I think it could make for a good listening experience. I do hope so anyway.
Yeah, hopefully so. And it's kind of cool because, you're over there in the UK, I'm here in the US in Seattle, Washington, and it's 1 o'clock here. The sun's still up and it's almost bedtime for you. So I love being able to do this and have that connection though. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, certainly. And like you mentioned at the beginning there, I'm glad you said that, because I have to say in the 7 months that Cove Wellbeing's been going, I've managed to connect with loads of amazing other men's mental health movements, podcast channels. And I didn't realize how many awesome movements are out there until I've done this. It feels super special. There's so many men like on the same mission statement, and I love the fact that none of us see it as a competition. We're all men on the same mission. We're going to work together with it, and that's felt really welcoming. It feels like a really nice community that we've grown. Right. I know we have similar contacts, don't we, already through Instagram?
Yes, yeah, we do have a few. So it's John, our buddy John Eli is definitely one of them. He's been a really great bridge, I think, in a lot of these, because he's so positive and just really excited about what he's doing and wanting to help people. And it's connecting with him has actually connected me with so many other people who are just have that same kind of mindset and passion. So it's really pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And like, this is an opportunity to let the audience know that what really sparked this, I think, for us, I don't know about you, when we were talking on WhatsApp, was when we both discovered that we both had a huge love for poetry too. I was like, wow, okay, even
Yes.
even more in common. And we were like, right, we've got to
Well,
do an episode, obviously, to do creative writing, which is kind of why we're here today, aren't we?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things because, and we'll talk about this more later, but poetry is one of those things in my life that's really brought me into a community that I wouldn't have ever had before. And so there's just a certain connection there with the arts and creative writing and things like that, that just, is really unlike any other. So I'm pretty excited to get to know you a little bit today.
Yeah, definitely. Same for me. It's been we'll talk about it more later, like you said. But if I didn't have poetry when I was a teenager, I don't think I would have got through my mental health problems. So it means a
Mm.
lot to me. And the 4 books that I've got beside me here, obviously people can't see us, but I've got four books, 100 poems. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But
Yes.
you obviously
Awesome.
requested me to grab a beverage, because I presume that is the etiquette,
Yeah.
right, for your show?
Well, yeah, that's our traditional intro. Basically, we start off with a beverage, kind of like a happy hour, kind of like a little pub chat, and just to get the conversation started.
Oh man, I can't make the noise of opening my bottle. I'm gonna have to wait. Hang on. There you go. That'll do.
There we go.
I was too organized, obviously.
It's a great impression.
But yeah, I have to say I'm not a huge drinker, but I do like one every now and again. So I've got the fruitiest version of a cider you can speak of. I think many cider fans will say that's not even cider, mate. But it's tasty. It tastes like Ribena, has alcohol in it. I mean, you can't go wrong, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the crazy thing is, it's something that I've noticed is that you folks over in the UK, you really like your sweet ciders. You like your sugar ciders, man. Uh, and here in the US, we like it tart. We like it dry and tart, and it's like ciders are like a craft thing over here, just like they are with beer. Um, so it's a completely different experience drinking a cider here than it is in the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, culturally, I find that very strange, how that all pans out, because we're all like, our main meal is roast dinner. So it's like roast dinner and lager. Maybe
Right.
throw some Guinness in the mix as well. But we're very lager and beer based, but like craft beer is huge over here now. Sort of,
You guys got
underground.
the brew dog over there.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's all that kind of stuff. So I feel like I'm a bit of a fraud really with my fruity stuff. But hey, there's a big market, so I'm one of them.
Hey, if you like it, you like it. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to judge you, man.
Yeah, well, that's all good. I'm already a little bit tipsy after 2 sips. That's how
Oh,
often I don't
yeah.
do it. Which is great. So
It's cheaper that way.
yeah, certainly. So I've kind of, as my audience always knows, I always have a set of questions to kind of keep me and the guest on track. Not
Yes.
because I can talk. So we've got a few questions that are like, I'll sprinkle across the episode. But it's just 2 guys chatting, isn't it? Basically about, what we love in mental health and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's kind of cool because I've been a lot. This is a really great platform for people to get involved with this kind of thing who don't necessarily have a professional background as a mental health, like a therapist or something like that. We have different experiences and different backgrounds, and what brought us to this arena essentially. And so it's just kind of cool to see all the different things that brought people to this point to where they want to help others heal.
Yeah, definitely. And like I deliberately haven't asked you too much about your story up to now and why you're doing what you're doing. And I do mention it quite a bit in my intro. But like, have you had what kind of struggles have you had, man, with your mental health and emotional health?
For me, it's nothing really extreme. I've been diagnosed with a little bit of ADD, a little bit of depression, nothing too like out there, nothing that's really debilitating. But it has definitely set me back in certain ways in my life. And it impacts my relationships in different ways, my like romantic relationships and things like that. And so I've had to do a lot of learning surrounding those things, and basically learning how not to allow ADD and depression to come in between me and my relationships and the other things that I'm doing in my life, in terms of goals and aspirations that I have, and making sure that I don't let ADD and depression keep me back from completing the things that I'm going for.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so with the ADD, like in sort of school life when you're a kid, is it something that's always kind of been with you, even when you were in school and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't know growing up, I didn't know that's what was going on, because when I was younger, it wasn't really overdiagnosed. It wasn't as much of a thing as it is now, I think. And there was definitely a period in time here in the US where kids were getting Ritalin for basically anything. Um,
Wow.
but I was right before that time. So basically, it never really struck my parents that there might be something actually going on. Um, and only for the fault of the fact that it wasn't talked about much yet. And so I went through middle school and high school struggling with these things and not knowing what I was struggling with. And it wasn't until my early mid-20s where I finally went and got checked out and talked to a doctor about, like, these things are really impacting my work, my job, my relationship, and I don't know what's going on. And so I've had a conversation with my doctor, and they were just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you have ADD. We should get you on some medicine.
It's kind of crazy how many of us kind of go through life and there's things that hold us back, isn't there? We have no idea of kind of why, really, and we've not had a chance to really explore it too much. We kind of just presume it's just our thing, isn't it? It's just the way we are.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes labeling can be a bit dangerous, but labeling us with certain disorders and things, but sometimes it can be very powerful and give people a sense of themselves, finally, a few answers to the mysteriousness of their behavior, which I think's really, really powerful. For me,
Absolutely.
I wasn't into anything wellness based until I was kind of in my mid-20s when things got really bad. But if it hadn't got really bad, I wouldn't have researched it and I wouldn't be here doing this. So,
That's awesome.
I try to have no regrets with
So,
everything.
so what kind of, I'm sorry. So what kind of things do you struggle with, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I kind of like a lot of the podcasts that I've kind of guest on. It's a bit complicated with my story, and lots of people know about it. So I kind of bullet point it like I do at the beginning of my intro. So, when I was a kid, my parents were, working constantly. I didn't really see them that much. I was always in childcare. So I didn't get to really form that attachment, as a child, to have a healthy attachment and know how to co-regulate with others and all that kind of stuff. Felt very
Yeah.
lonely, So, I got abused by a childminder when I was 6 and 7 in various different ways.
Mm.
And I wasn't able to tell anybody because I didn't have that connection with my parents. So it was a very lonely, suffering experience.
Wow. Yeah.
So then, when I was 9, we moved to Bath from Cardiff in Wales. And then I kind of lost all my friends that I felt safe with, had to start again. And then I was heavily bullied for years, lots of physical fight stuff every day. And again, because I still felt lonely and isolated, I didn't tell anybody about it. And that's why I started writing poetry, which we'll talk about later. But then by the time I got to my 20s, so much damage had been done at that point that I had deep, dark depression. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't interact with strangers. I couldn't use any eye contact with anybody. It was crazy. I can't imagine me. I'm such a social, chatty guy now. I can't imagine.
I was going to say, I would not even make that assumption meeting you initially now.
Yeah, it kind of just shows that these aren't death sentences for all of us. It's not a life sentence, there is hope if you can find the right kind of help and the right kind of safety.
Absolutely.
But it's my biggest fears in life were meeting new people and being in places I didn't know, whereas now mine is the essence of meeting people that I don't know. Is the whole point of this. So I feel like it's a good message. But after all my depression, and then when I had loads of therapy, NLP, hypnotherapy, all that kind of stuff, I then remembered all my trauma. And then that led me into major anxiety then, because I'd remembered everything that happened to me and going, holy shit, this is horrible.
Oh yeah.
Horrific.
Trying to work through and basically like go through the grieving process of all of those things that went down.
Yeah, definitely that processing experience. It left, I was fainting, blacking out with like panic attacks for about a year and a half. And then I was able to sort of find other modalities like meditation and mindfulness and embodiment work, all of that kind of stuff, sort of repairing my body's trauma rather than my brain's trauma as such. So I kind of came through that experience. And then ever since I kind of healed over that, which was like, I don't know, 7 years ago, every year I've got closer and closer to like feeling more complete and having a bigger sense of self, really. So that's the quickest way I can tell my story.
That's a pretty good rundown, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it didn't actually end there. I then had a life-threatening illness at 32, in which I should be dead, basically, of a very rare condition with the intestines. And
Oh, wow.
I'm lucky to be here, and I remember that every single day of my life now, because in the cheesiest, moviest way possible, after you thought you were going to die, and as you go into surgery,
Right, right.
it does kind of change your perspective a little bit. So I
Yeah, well,
try
I
to.
can say I'm even more glad to be sitting here talking to you then.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. It's I don't tend to talk too much about my story like this on my show, so thank you for letting me tell my audience all of this. It's quite
Yeah, of
useful.
course.
So that's me basically, mate. And now I'm doing this today and loving life.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, so I mean, for me, it was like I came to this what I'm doing now with Into the Dark Blue. I started doing it because of basically working through some of those issues that I was telling you about with some relationship stuff, and went through a divorce in my early 30s, and uh, it it was one of those things that made me realize I'm not the only guy going through some of these things that I was going through. Um, in my 20s, for most of my 20s, I was a youth minister, and I was helping kids and their parents and things like that, and doing a lot of having a lot of conversation with them about just basically the things that they were dealing with, and never really connected that like I might be going through some stuff too, and some things that I need to work through, until
Yeah.
I was not I think I was 33 when I finally went to a therapist for the first time. um, and so anyway, I spent so many years counseling and helping others, um, as a youth minister, and just never allowed myself to heal, never allowed myself to really actually even recognize that I had problems. Um, and so anyway, went through this divorce and everything, and realizing that I needed to work through some things, started working through my stuff, going to therapy and doing all that. And a couple years later, I'm like, I struggled to go to a therapist because I didn't think it was okay. I thought it would be looked down on. I thought that I would be basically like thought less of as a man for going to therapy, right? For a long time. But when I finally started going, I was just like, if I had done this years ago, I'd be an even better man than I am now. And so I realized that a lot of guys probably have the same kind of thoughts, the same kind of experiences. And what better than to create a community for guys where they can go and talk about these things. Therapy is not always affordable. It's not always attainable. And so for me, I realized I worked through a lot of my issues talking to friends at the pub, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was like, let's create a space where this is something where other guys can come and just know that they can talk about their problems in an open space and accepting space, and not have to feel judged for the things that they're dealing with, because frankly, we do all deal with a lot of these things that just aren't really talked about: abuse, depression, other mental health issues, whatever it may be, and we're just supposed to keep quiet about it, or we think we are.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And it's the same, in the UK as it is in America. That kind of, we come a long way as a male race, being able to be vulnerable and talk about these things, but there's still a long way to go. And that's why it's so good to have so many these platforms. And Man Cove Wellbeing's main mission is to kind of empower men with the knowledge of human experience, so to understand what anxiety is, to understand their triggers, to know what to do when they are triggered by something's going on for them, and to have a better sense of being aware of who they are and what's happening in their body and their minds. And I think that's very powerful, and it can allow a lot of men to be like, okay, cool, I kind of get what's happening here. Maybe I will reach out for some help, rather than expecting a man to go from, having anger management issues to boom, I'm going to get therapy, I'll be fine. I think you need to understand a little bit about what anger means, what it does to your body with your hormones, everything else. So
absolutely.
feel more empowered with your kind of your choice. And that's kind of why we do educational videos as well as the podcast stuff as well.
That's cool.
And that's, you know, that learning of, you know, listen to audiobooks constantly, all the people I've interviewed on other podcasts over the years has really opened my eyes to like what it is to be human, let alone a man. And it can honestly like really transform your life when you get it more. You know, you can see other people's stuff. You can see other people are suffering, and you're like, okay, I can see they're suffering right now. What can I do to like hold a space for them, make them feel safe?
Yeah,
and that's a really
absolutely
beautiful, caring thing to do. But like you said, when you're a youth minister, sometimes you care so much that self-care just goes out the window, which is really ironic, but happens time and time again, doesn't it?
Yep, absolutely, it sure does. And I think that's the same for like the caretaker in any situation. You know, if you're like the one in the family that kind of holds things together, and you're always the one that's basically trying to like mitigate problems in just even your family unit, you know, a lot of times you get kind of ignored in terms of your needs and that sort of thing as well. And I think that can happen a lot for men in that aspect, because, you know, a lot of times we feel like we're expected to be the providers, the caretakers all the time, and that we can't be vulnerable, and that we can't, you know, express our emotions and the things that we're dealing with, because we're supposed to be the strong ones. We're supposed to be the ones that, like, you know, hold things upright. And so,
Yeah.
you know, similar kind of experience, I think, in that aspect as well.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, that's the thing, isn't it? All of us as humans deserve to be seen, understood, you know, accepted and held. You know, we all deserve that, I think, as humans. And I think caretakers kind of forget that a little bit, that they also deserve to be heard, understood, accepted, and unseen is the other one. I forgot about seen, but
Yep,
we all need that. Otherwise it becomes very lonely, which is, you know, how I felt for a lot of my life, hence, you know, some of my creative pursuits, which is what we're talking about today. So
yes,
yeah, I think we've opened up a little bit there, haven't we, about what we've been through, which, you know, flows nicely into what we're talking about today.
Yeah, totally. Creativity, man. And seriously, it's something. I was really excited that you wanted to talk about the creative process and how it helps in dealing with some of these things, because, you know, it's something that without the creative process, without art, without poetry, without music, all of these things in my life, I think I would be in a much more difficult place now, than I am. So I've been looking forward to talking about this with you, because I don't have this conversation very often.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about the creative thing being a useful thing for mental health until I was able to look back on it. But then when I started learning about things like art therapy, drama therapy, there is some amazing things out there to help people overcome trauma through the arts, which I think is such a beautiful way to like process what you've been through and release it from your body through, you know, you can do it through dance even, which I think is pretty amazing. But play therapy for kids, they've shown it's the easiest way to help a child through like trauma, especially if they're 7, 8 or 9, for example, who really can't, you know, they really can't articulate themselves in the way that an adult could going through these traumatic things. So they use play therapy, you know, using reenaction and imagination and figures and, you know, setting scenes. And it's supposed to be such an effective way for children to tell what's happened to them outside of themselves, so they can, because it's quite hard to bear that level of pain as a child. So I've always been fascinated by play therapy ever since I learned about it. I think it's pretty amazing. And then made me think about the power of writing, journaling, you know, writing down affirmations. You know, this is all ways to do it. You know, telling stories through poetry is another way to kind of get your story out there, I guess, and feel cleansed by sharing it with others. So, like with your writing, have you? I presume, you know, I haven't looked too much, so you can tell me all about it. So do you share it out publicly to kind of to help people as well as for yourself?
Yeah, you know, for years I did spoken word poetry, probably later in high school, until I was about 26, 27. I was very regular in performing at local poetry slams and open mic poetry spots and things like that. And yeah, and then also I did a self-published poetry book I think 33, 34 when I self-published that on Amazon, um, of basically my path, like the poems I wrote from earlier on, probably when I was 18, 19, up until when I was about 31, 32, and just basically my path of my progression from basically like the religious life to the non-religious life, and in the relationship to out of the relationship that I was in with my ex-wife. And so it's kind of that journey of how I learned about myself through poetry.
Oh, that's amazing. And I guess you can look back on that as kind of like scripture for where you've been and where you've come from, which is, I think it's kind of cool, isn't it? To be able to look back and hear yourself in the past tense. You might have been a slightly different person when you wrote it too.
Definitely. That's very true. Yeah. And I think that's one of the great things about writing poetry and journaling and things like that, is having that marker and being able to see where you were, where you used to be compared to where you are now, and the progress that you've made. And it's something to really like seriously be proud of, to me, because you can see how you've matured as a person and how you've brought yourself out of some really difficult times, and it's just really encouraging to look back on those things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't, like, with all the poems that I've got, as I've told you before, I created this other project called Motion Picture Poets, which is
Yes,
over
it's so
on,
cool.
yeah, it's kind of, both of these things are my passion projects, but originally, turning my poems into short films, which is essentially what it is. I was doing it within Cove. I thought, hang on a minute, this is like a whole other awesome craft, stuff. So now
Yes.
there's four poets involved in it now. So I convert a lot of their poetry into short films as well, using stock footage and music and stuff. And they love it.
Yeah.
They love seeing their writing come to life, through the eyes of someone
Hmm.
else too. And it's been I can't wait to like convert all 100 of my poems into that. Some of them are super dark though, so I'm not sure how to use the imagery for those ones. But I have to
Yeah,
say that, yeah, sorry, it's just
no, it's okay. Keep going.
you know
I love hearing about where you started with this.
the thing is, like I said, I started writing them when I was 13. So
Okay.
that must have been a couple of years after I moved over to Bath in England. So it was kind of like, I don't know where it came from, honestly. I don't know where I got it from or what inspired me, but obviously the inner child, that child in me really needed to share it. And if you like, when you read some of it, it's like, how the hell was he writing that at 13 and 14? Like, it's come from
Yeah,
somewhere and I don't know where it's come from,
some
but
difficult experiences for sure, I'm sure.
yeah, and it 100% ties into kind of, because this is obviously a trauma-based podcast. I just wanted
Hmm.
to share like one little thing about why I think that creative expression is good for trauma. But I realized
Please do.
I haven't asked you the most important question on my show, that if your audience end up listening to my stuff will hear it, which is, what is your definition of trauma? I totally haven't asked you that yet, and we're 30 minutes in. So for you, mate, what do you think is the definition of trauma? What is it in your words?
I think that for me, I would say trauma is anything that has left behind a negative lasting mark, almost branded you with kind of this negative perception of yourself and who you are.
That is an awesome answer. Thank you so much. I like that. An imprint. That's a really good way to think about it. As in a mark, like you said, it leaves its mark.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so many of the people that I've asked this question, we've all got to this place of knowing that trauma isn't actually the event that stays with you. It's the response to the event that you carry in your body.
Hmm.
You go into fight and flight or shut down when you're attacked, for example, and you carry that through because you don't process the bodily reaction. That takes a safe space and a therapeutic relationship, to help pull that energy out of you, if that makes sense.
Yes,
So
definitely.
what you're saying, that leaving of the mark, is exactly what we're talking about there. That piece of that response is the bit that kind of is stuck inside you, that marks you, a bit like a trauma tattoo, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Just those things that tell you that you're not good enough, or you're not, what you're supposed to be, or you're not I don't know, whatever it is, you just, it's just that weight that just keeps you down and keeps you, just, I don't know, not being the best you can be.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of, that needs a voice, that part of you
Hmm.
needs a voice. It needs to be seen, heard, and understood so it can process and move forward. I think that's why writing can be quite powerful for that, and any kind of creativity, because it gives a voice, I think, to that part of you that you can't really verbalize by chatting.
Hmm.
You can put it on the paper in a very beautiful kind of script, even a cryptic way, even. And
Yeah,
it's
totally.
kind of a way, isn't it, for that side of you to speak, which is kind of what I think is the most beautiful thing about it, really, because it's so subjective and personal, isn't it?
Yeah, seriously. And it's kind of funny because you said that you wrote your first poem around 13, and I actually did the same. You said that, and I realized that I was inspired at the time by some of, like, I was just getting into music, my own music, for the first time. I was choosing my music. I was like learning about new things that my parents had never introduced me to. I was listening to Metallica and Pantera and all these punk rock bands and all that. And so, and looking back, this is probably the first time it should have been recognized that I was dealing with some depression, because I was writing poetry um, about being dead. Essentially, it was really dark. But for me, the poetry has always been a way to get those things out without actually acting on them throughout my, since I started writing poetry. Um, that's been how I say the things that I need to say without actually doing them. Like, so if I'm struggling with some dark or difficult thoughts, if I write them down through poetry, um, that's how I process that, instead of actually acting out the things that I'm feeling or thinking that I might want to do.
Yeah, that's such a really nice way to say it too. Like you said, you kind of, it's an outlet that otherwise could become very toxic, couldn't it, in any other form? Like you said,
Absolutely.
through actions, which is amazing. Because one of my poet friends on the channel, she wrote one called "The Day I Didn't Kill Myself." So it talked a
Mm,
little bit about how she wanted to, but remembers that as a day that she didn't. So it's a slightly different narrative later for her to reflect on. And it can kind of
hmm.
help us change our narratives as well, and the way we remember things. You can read it back and go, wow, I can't believe that's how I felt at the time. Your narrative's changed since then. And it's a nice kind of marker of how far you've come too. So it kind of
Yeah, definitely.
taps into all those kind of things. So I think this could be a good chance. Should we crack out a poem each? Should we do it for the
Yeah, let's do
audience?
it, man. Sure.
I've got two shorter ones. You've got a longer one. So would you like to start with your one and we go from there?
Sure. Sounds good. It's been a little while since I read this out loud, so
Well, if you've been
uh
doing poetry, if you've done poetry slams, I presume you're like an epic reader out loud. It's like,
yeah, let's see if I still got it.
yeah.
All right, this one's called Soft Song. And just to start it off, I was actually in a really kind of difficult place with religion and with my ex-wife kind of at the same time. So this is simultaneously a letter to both God and my ex-wife. So it's kind of an interesting contrast there,
Okay.
and how they fit in together. But here we go. Where have you been? Throw your arms around me, kiss me on my cheeks, and tell me how you missed me, love. Because I missed you. Every time the sun rose and I woke alone, sand in my teeth, calloused feet, and vultures circling patiently above. I missed you every time the rain fell in the distance and I was just a day's journey away from drinking you in and letting you soak to the core so I could remember what it means to be a lover of life again. Tell me how you missed me, because God, I missed you. I missed you every time the sun set and my stone bed turned cold. The frigid winds whisked around my neck, choked the breath from my chest, making me gasp for you. Oh, how I missed you, love. Did you miss me? When you heard I wasn't doing well, did you search for me? Hold me tight and tell me there's more to this life than loneliness, because as the lion's den grows restless with hunger, my hands have grown too weak to survive the hunt. And I will beckon you from the silence with one long, slender motion, asking you to wrap your arms around my body, begging please play a melody on my shoulder blades, rib cage. It is the feeling of your song against mine I miss the most, the words unspoken in the way you feel me, the touch of your soft song on the hard rhythm of my heart. Turns out when I'm alone, jazz just doesn't sound the same. Turns out when I'm alone, jazz just isn't yellow. It's midnight, and there are no stars out tonight. It's the 8th day of December, each 8th note melting as it drifts by, begging for snow, for a change in pace. Sing slowly this ballad, this tale of two, composer, piano. Every new note more compelling, not a waltz, but a jazz tune. Play these keys, play them true, give this blues sax a reason to smile. Stand that bass up on its feet, make it dance to the rhythm of a swinging snare drum. Let the touch of your soft song take me higher with every quarter note. I will beckon you from the silence with minor keys, asking you to sing a melody in major, begging please let the touch of your soft song change my tune.
Wow.
And that's that.
I always leave a little pause there before I jumped in. Wow, man. Like, I'm a visual listener too, so I was with you there. It's visualizing all those moments. So that's amazing. So I can clearly see the parts of it to do with your ex-wife. So, but I can kind of see intertwined in that. Were you saying this kind of your battle with religion? Was it, or was it a slight losing of faith, or not? Or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, more just a evolution, I think, of my faith. I was in a time where I was really disenchanted with the church and how the church was basically interacting with people, and how I saw so much the church using it for people in the church using religion as like more of a self sorry, I'm trying to think of the words, but basically like they use religion in ways that weren't really helpful to others. And so it was really, basically pastors and reverends trying to make a better life for themselves and doing the things that they needed to do to make more money and to have more clout in the church, things like that. And just a lot of things being missed. And religion, and for me, Christianity had become something that was so far off base of what it was intended to be that I just couldn't subscribe to it anymore. And so it was basically like trying to figure out, okay, I'm teaching these kids and I'm trying to help these kids learn how to have faith, but I don't even know what faith is at this point, because all these things that I was taught as a child growing up in the church, I don't believe anymore. And so redefining God and what part God plays in my life, and the broader scope of this God if this God is as big as they tell us it is, then why do we put it in such a small box?
Yeah, that's such a and actually the more you talk about that, the more I could probably take the poem that you wrote there as being that in isolation too,
Mm-hmm.
being held by a God and being seen by a God and understood and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of I love the way that flows. And I think if you didn't tell anybody what the poem is about, I think it's done in a way that I think we've all probably been there at some point with breakups and partners
Mm-hmm.
leaving us and all that kind of stuff. So very very resonant as well, isn't it? It's going to really help people.
Definitely.
Which is amazing. So you said because that was just so amazing. So do you have like a range of sort of darker stuff all the way up to light stuff? Do you have a certain emotional style, or is it just freelancing?
It's kind of most of my poetry is free form. It comes from things that I'm going through at the time, and I try to. It's really really hard to start. If a poem starts out dark, I try to turn it light, because I try to find like the positives in the things that I'm going through while I'm writing, if that makes sense.
It's kind of a journey, isn't it? If you're telling a story, normally a story has a journey, beginning, middle,
Mm-hmm.
end. So it's kind of you try, sometimes you can break from that model, but unfortunately I think we're just built to like a story and a journey that's really clear to
Yeah, definitely.
to connect with, because I'm not much of a rhymer, you see, and I've tried to rhyme poetry, but it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't sound as good, it's not as real, it's not my style.
Right, definitely. And there's, the different types of rhyme schemes as well. And that's why I really prefer free verse, because you can do so much. It's like doing a painting to me. For doing free verse poetry is like abstract painting, and it's just really just this the release of emotions, and you can play with words, and you can do so much more that you wouldn't be able to do in something that's a bit more structured, like like a landscape painting or something like that.
It's kind of like a rhythm thing, isn't it? You can hear writings that it's so rhythmic that it's essentially like a song, but then you have the stuff that isn't rhythmic actually catches you off guard. It's very potent and powerful because it doesn't have rhythm.
Yes,
um
exactly. Kind of like free form jazz.
yeah, totally, because even with music, people, I will always traditionally want a hooky chorus and kind of a rhythmic verse, even though I don't write poetry that way. It's
Uh-huh.
the kind of music that I connect with. So it's interesting, and the two poets that are the main two poets that are part of motion picture are big rhymers. I'm the only one that's not, so it adds a bit of
Oh, gotcha.
variety to the channel. Like Debs is just an amazing rhymer. How she does it, it's so beautiful.
That's
Whereas I'm
cool.
much more like, bang, this is what happened, this is how I felt, bang, 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 bang. But that was because
Yes,
it was
I'm
go
sorry.
for it, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm excited to hear one of your pieces, man.
All right, well, let's do it. I just want to thank you again for sharing that. That's absolutely amazing. And
Yeah, no
I'm
problem.
really
Thank you
keen
for.
to at least convert one of your poems into a video, and maybe we should do that one because it's amazing.
I'd be down for that.
But sometimes my poet friends send me videos which are not so hard to find stock video footage for.
Oh yeah.
One was about Vikings invading a village. It's amazing, but I was like, where the hell am I going to get Viking footage from? So I managed to use it with like cowboys and Indians, and it works really well actually.
Oh,
So
nice.
you've got to find ways around it. So yeah, I think, what book's this? Hang on. So this is The New World. So that's my third book. So I must have been, what, 15. And a lot of my stuff, honestly, is so dark. I've done a few videos for it so far. I did one about 9/11 as well. Oh my
Oh
god,
wow, cool.
it's pretty brutal, what
I
I've
bet.
written. But I wrote it that night after it happened.
Oh
Oh, by
wow.
the way, before I do this, what environment do you write in? Does it matter, or do you have like an ambiance you like to create when you get pen to paper?
Honestly, for me, it's all very in the moment. So I mean, I could be at home watching TV. I could be, when I was commuting on the train into Seattle regularly, I would write a lot on the train, or even walking through the city. When I first moved here, I was on foot a lot, and so, if I would get some kind of inspiration while I was walking through the city, I would just stop and like sit at a cafe and write there for a little bit. So it's more momentary, I think, for me than specific ambiance.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, yeah. Because sometimes it can be, but mostly especially as a kid, I needed quiet in my room. It was always candles, and I would just
Mm,
like deep dive. And I always remember those times. If there's ever candles on in my room now as an adult, it takes me back there. And actually, it's quite beautiful to be in that
that's
space.
cool. So has that changed for you now? Do you still needed like more of a specific kind of space for that, or do you
Well,
more right?
I don't really write as much now. I think I probably I should, because my poetry is completely different now. I've gone on a personal development journey. Whereas
Yeah.
before, my poetry, a lot of it's trying to figure it out. Whereas
Hmm.
now, it'd be interesting to see. I'd love to write a poem about trauma, and when the time is right, I'll do it, and I'll do it on the show. But my partner's always like, "Oh, you should write again." I write her stuff. So it's like for Valentine's Day last year, I wrote this poem called "World Warriors," which was us as a team. Warriors together. You
Oh,
know,
that's cool. I like that.
protecting our our people around us, our community. It was really beautiful actually.
Yeah,
um
that's great.
but that's obviously for us to enjoy, but yeah. So I've got two. Later on I'm going to do one called Take My Love to finish the show, where it's actually You Can't Take My Love, so it's a nice positive finish to our show, which would be good.
Yeah.
So this one is called Saying Good Riddance, and it's actually my up and down journey from being in the pits of despair and wondering why I should even be on the planet, through to, oh, I've got things that make me feel like I should stay. but I used to go back and forth. My thoughts would shift and change. So this was kind of an example of shifting and changing.
Nice.
It kind of ends happy, so that's good. I feel under pressure because you did yours so well, like you're on stage. I don't usually do that, so I'll just be myself. It's fine.
Yes,
Okay,
please do.
so shattering glass in my broken world, missing bolts in the constructed world, looking for that extra piece for the complete. Empty smiles, shallow eyes, all I love right now, uplifting hope, future visions, all add to the illusion that things are going to get better. Full days and contented nights, word-filled pages, full inboxes, party invitations, non-stop summer days, dancing feet, hugs and kisses, giggles and laughter, all ahead as the past is dead. Lost remembered, it's all in perspective. I've waited and waited, now I push on. Leave the hateful days by saying good riddance. So that's just a little one.
Yeah, I like that. I really love that that kind of observational poetry. That's something that really I've always been really attracted to and have not been good at. And kind of like that marking images that really stand out to us, you know, and marking the things that help us to kind of get through difficult moments. Just like some of that stuff you were talking about. And it's like, there's a simplicity in that I absolutely love. It's kind of like a really good photograph to me, where you can like lay out just what you're looking at, and the thing that's inspiring you in that moment in such a way that just really helps you feel it. You know what I mean?
Definitely. It's funny you should say that with the photo album thing, because for me, I can only use certain poems of mine to turn into videos, because like you said, I can quite easily turn it into a motion picture, because it's so it's explaining a very momentous time. So I'm using words that you can easily find footage for, basically, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah,
it's like you say, observational poetry is quite easy to turn into a video, if that makes sense, over something that's a little bit more mysterious. Which is what I can get sometimes from my amazing poet friends, and it really challenges my creative skill, which I love. A really good test.
Yeah, I watched one of them actually that was really impressive, and it was a bit more of that kind of abstract poetry, kind of free verse, and it was, I can't remember which one it was, but it was so good. So guys, if you're listening to this, make sure you go and check out what's it called again?
Motion Picture Poets.
Yes, Motion Picture Poets. It's really good. It's if you want something, it's like the poems are about a few minutes long, and it's just kind of, it's really nice, ethereal, just great to calm you down and just find some inspiration. So
yeah, thank you. I think from what I can see on the analytics on YouTube, I can see people are tending to do is kind of, people get into like a YouTube zone where they just spend an hour, don't they, scanning around, watching little videos. I feel like people get hooked into the page and they watch, like, I know, 5 or 6 of them in a row just because they're so short. And I'm really happy with that. It's lush. They have like a little bit of an evening where they just crack through them all, which is great.
That's awesome.
Which is really awesome. Yeah, thank you for the plug. That's great. But yeah, as you can see, like how passionate we both are about it, and how I think cathartic it is to read them back too. So
absolutely,
mentally,
I was actually just sitting. Sorry, I was sitting here thinking like how much better. Like it just puts me in a more positive headspace just to even to read it out loud, and then to hear you read as well, and have that, like, to share that experience with you. It just really it puts me in a better mindset. Just that alone. And it's almost the connection of the community there that it kind of creates between us. But then it's also just that expression and being able to get some of those difficult words out in the open that I wrote in a dark place that were really difficult to write, and reading them, like I could feel the emotions, some of the emotions that I felt writing that poem, and then just like releasing them, and so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the community side of it's huge. I think with any kind of tribal thing, where you find the people are into what you're into. And I was watching something the other day where they were like, the good thing about humans is there's always going to be a community for your thing, whatever your weird thing that you think is weird. There will be a community on YouTube or on a blog somewhere or on a Facebook group, they'll be out there. It doesn't matter how obscure you think your hobby is.
Yeah.
There will be
Yeah.
people that love it too.
I feel like I've heard a very similar statement about sexual fetishes. So
Yeah, exactly. There'll be people who connect to that totally. And I, like you said, that's why things like, AA can be so effective. People who have the shared suffering, people who have felt where you've been, is very bonding, and they talk
yeah,
a lot about
definitely.
trauma. They talk a lot about trauma bonds, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, yeah, it can be quite toxic, but actually a trauma bond can be very beautiful. You've both been traumatized in a similar way. You're able to hold each other and heal together because you have a safe person that has the same bond as you. And I
Hmm.
think that's beautiful. And like you said, just doing this podcast with you today and sharing this work is going to make us feel more connected, just because we share a passion that binds us, really, which we wouldn't get if we just did small talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Very
Which
true.
I really, really like, which is great. What other questions? I think we've kind of mashed up all our questions into general chit chat, which is always a good sign of good flow. We've
Yeah,
already
very natural
done.
flow.
Yeah.
Good.
Do we find our poetry helps us mentally, emotionally? Yeah, we know that. We said that. We kind of covered why we started, didn't we? And
Yeah, a little bit. Do you have what kept you going though? So like I think starting when you're younger is one thing, but I think there's something that happens too, or for me anyway, in my probably like I think late teens, early 20s, that just really truly inspired me to be a poet, not just to write poems, not just to write poetry, but to call myself a poet, you know. Do you have something that inspired you in that way? Something that like really just hit you hard and was just like, this is what I want to do?
that's a good question, that, because I always think about the narrative being I was using it to cope, but it's got to be so much more than that, isn't it? To have a creative brain that can structure writing, there has to be more to it, doesn't it? But
Yeah, like
I've
what
all
created that passion?
oh, that's a good one. I've always been insanely creative. I've always had projects. I love making posters for Instagram. I've always, even in school, I did really well in art. So I don't know why it's always been in me, but it always has. And I think that's why I love Cove and sharing people's blogs and narrating them, because I feel like it's nice to give their work a voice too. But there's
Yeah,
just
that's
something
cool.
about inspiring people through a creative pursuit, which I think is what keeps me hooked in. It's that
Mm.
it's the actual sharing of it, I think, that keeps me going, because I love to, if I know that it's emotively affects somebody for good, then I mean, you can't ask for more than that as a human, can you? To actually move somebody in a direction
Oh,
that makes them more content or more embodied or happy or whatever the word is. I think
that's
that's
great.
pretty special, isn't it? So I think it's that my ability to connect to others with it is probably what keeps me hooked, I think.
Mm, yeah, definitely. I can see that. Um, yeah, I think like there's a couple of things that really created a passion for me with poetry, and one of them was my junior year of high school. One of the English teachers brought in like national slam poetry champion for a U.S. slam poetry
Nice.
champion to do a workshop for us after school, and a friend of mine invited me to it, and just completely changed my life. I was like, oh my god, this is like, if this is what poetry can be, I'm in. Like I'm hooked. Um, and that, I think shortly after that is when I wrote my first more like slam style poem. Um, and then later on, I actually got into like the Beat Generation, and I started reading like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and all those guys. And so William Burroughs wrote Naked Lunch, and that was the first piece of writing that really inspired me to be um, like free in my writing and talk about the things that are really going on in my head. And I think that's when the passion for writing just really, just that fire just lit, because I finally realized that I could talk about the things honestly that I needed to talk about, without holding back. And um, and when I started doing that, just the poetry started being much more positively received by people, and it just completely changed my process and my interactions with people when I started being more authentic in my writing. And that book, Naked Lunch, is what inspired that for me.
That's amazing. I love the fact that you use the word authentic there too, and you can kind of like chuck vulnerability in the mix as well, because
Mm.
I think it's a safer way to be vulnerable. You know, you can kind of share indirectly what's going on. Therefore, I think that in a nutshell is why, like what we're talking about today, is why it's so powerful for mental and emotional health, because
Mhm.
it is certainly a way to be vulnerable by doing it through a creative platform, rather than sitting in a room with a counselor and, you know, opening up and hoping you don't get traumatized by what you're saying. This is a way of kind of offloading a little bit by bit. And, you know, I think that's why this stuff is so heavily connected to mental health, really, because there's so much inside all of us, isn't there, that we probably just bottle up and we don't get to release it to the world, you know.
Yep,
um,
absolutely.
which
Very
which is
true.
Yeah, which is tough. How long have we been going for now? I always like try to keep it within 60 minutes. I have no idea
Yes,
how
we're
we're
pretty
doing.
close. We're cutting it close to 60 minutes, I think. So, and it's usually I usually can tell by how close I am to finishing my beer.
Ah, well, I've
So
got.
I usually drink a beer within a 60-minute time period, and it's about time to call it. So yeah, my cider, actually I did a cider as well, since you were doing one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I wanted to compare, but yeah. So mine's almost gone, and I think you have another poem to share, don't you?
Yeah, well, I've got a quarter of mine left, so I'm going to crack out a poem to send us off for today. I do hope this has been useful, obviously, to the audience. I think we've managed to cover quite a bit today. But this one that I'm going to share with you to finish off the show for
Yes.
both podcasts is totally different. I've never written a poem in this format and structure before, so you'll get it when I start
Ooh.
doing it.
All right.
But it's much more powerful and probably a lot more positive as well. Not that there's not a place for negative poetry, because there is, because it's all powerful. So this one is called "You Can't Take My Love." I mean, it's pretty obvious in the title where this is going. So let's do it. Fall to the floor, I can't take no more. Take all of my blood, you can't take my love. Hit me down, leave me cold, lock me away, you can't take my love. You fail to feed me, never speak to me, never love me, you can't take my love. You can take my money, take my clothes, take my home, you can't take my love. Never let me out, never let me down, never let me fly, you can't take my love. You can take my limbs, take my eyes, take my soul. You can't take my love. Take my life, take my death, take my birth. You can't take my love. You see, I was made to love. Take my family, take my friends, take my heart. I'll give you my hate, give you my pain, give you my suffering. I'll keep my love to live on strong. And that's that one.
I like that. That sounds to me like it would be such a great song. Like you could use that as lyrics to a
Yes.
song so well. And it just reminds me of some of the really iconic, just really good love songs that you just want to listen to over and over.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's an obvious link between poetry and music, obviously. Like,
Oh, of
I love
course.
a well-written song, is in the lyrics make sense, it's emotive, it follows a journey. Oh, it gives me tingles singing along. I mean, there's nothing like it being submerged in a song which you're deeply connected to based on what the song means. Oh, mind-blowing stuff, isn't it? It's beautiful.
Yes, indeed. I love it. Man, this is really cool. Like I'm really pumped to be doing an episode about creativity, because this is something that's always been such a huge passion of mine, and that's not something that I've talked about much yet on the Into the Dark Blue podcast. But definitely something that I want to implement more in the future, and really allowing space for creativity, which is something that I've tried to do also with the our blog that we have, Real Guys Real Talk blog, that gives the other guys the opportunity to kind of share their story in the way that they need to share it, for others to learn from it if they're able to, and so I'm just really excited to be doing an episode like this. So thank you for joining me on this, man.
No, thank you. I've only ever done this once before. As you know, I did a group chat with the guys on creativity as well, with an author who also helps writers, with their journey. So this is the second time I've done it, but there may well be a podcast, my friend, attached to Motion Picture Poets at some point. So
there you go.
I'll 100% give you a shout for that, because we'll probably do lots of reading poetry out, talking about poetry techniques and how to express yourself. So I think you'll be awesome value for that, man. Especially as it's all women in Motion Picture Poets apart from me. So you could
Nice.
good to get a bloke on. But thank you. This is such an epic way to have ended our trauma podcast. Actually, it's totally different to our usual format. So thank you for being part of this finale send off for the series. It's been great.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I love talking about those subjects and just trying to work through myself and help others work through as well. That's really important to me. So I'm glad to get to be a part of it. So can you do me a huge favor and tell the Into the Dark Blue listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. The easiest thing to do is just to type in Cove Wellbeing on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and it will come up. There's nothing named anything like that. So
yeah, perfect.
You'll find it. If not, it's www.mancovewellbeing.com, and then that will send you to all our podcast channels and everything else. So that's the easy way. And for my audience, mate, where can we find you?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to intothedarkblue.com. And there you have the links to the Instagram, Facebook. There you can listen to the podcast straight from the website. The Real Guys Real Talk blog is there. And then we also have a resources page for people struggling with mental health issues. So numbers they can call to find therapists, to get immediate emergency help. And then also I'm starting a list of mindset coaches that I've connected with through Instagram and things like that. So people can find that as well. So, and then lastly, if you're interested in reading more of my poetry, Nomad Psalms is on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and search Nomad Psalms, you can find the book there. There should be the only thing with that title. So
awesome. Thank you. I realized I didn't mention Motion Picture Poets, which would probably be quite useful to this audience.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Please do.
So yeah, type in Motion Picture Poets again on any of those platforms. You'll find us. If you get a chance, just hang out on our YouTube channel for an hour or so. You could probably make your way through most of the stuff there. And let me know, if there's any poets listening right now that fancy getting more involved with us, let me know. There is a Patreon link to it, so my poets pay $20 a month, and then I make at least one video a month for them. So it's a way of just having an energy exchange and stuff, which seems really special. So that's really
awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It was great to chat with you, man. Yes,
likewise, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, sure thing.
All right, cheers,
mate.
So thank you for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you know anybody that might be a good guest for Series 3, do let me know. We have space open on a couple of episodes coming up, so it would be good to knuckle down and chat with some amazing people along the way. I just want to do a big shout out to all our patrons for their support. That's Michael Morgan, Emerald McLeod, Maggie Palmer, Roland Chesters, Hannah Irvin, Karen Goodson, Julie Ferris, and of course Stephen Truelove and Daryl Osborne, my co-host on our other podcast. You can sign up to our Patreon community at the link in the description of this video, or visit www.patreon.com/MCW. There's a range of benefits there. You can also find out more about us at mancovewellbeing.com. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back for Series 3 soon with some more wellness chitty chat. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.